And you're still on to Business Daily on Trust TV. The Monetary Policy Committee meeting of the CBN will be concluded today. As you know, the meeting started yesterday. The two-day meeting started yesterday, and today we do expect for the CBN governor to brief Nigerians on the decisions made from that meeting. A lot of, should I say, predictions coming from different quarters, and different analysts and economic watchers are predicting a rise in, monetary policy rate particularly. But how possible is that? What should we expect from that meeting? Well, my guest, who is an economic analyst, Gbolade Idokolo, is now with me. Thank you for joining us on Business Daily this morning.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Like I said in my introduction, so many, I should say, predictions coming from different people, especially with regards to, adjustment in the monetary policy rate. But let's hear from you. Are you for or against that?
Actually, looking at the position of inflation presently, trending around 29% or thereabout, it is logical to want to increase the interest rates to meet up with the inflationary trends. It is an economic norm that when inflation continues to go high, then the interest rate should follow so that it can be able to reduce it. But over the past years, we have seen that continuous increase, even in the MPC rate, has not stemmed inflation. Instead, it has continued to increase all the way. So when we look at the fact that this is the first MPC meeting to be held by the new CBN team, the last MPC was around July. So you see that a lot has happened between July and now that could want to make us look at a situation whereby the rate could be increased at the end of the day to be able to meet up with inflationary trends. But on the other side of it, if the MPC rate is increased, that means it's going to be more finance costs for businesses. And this new administration is trying to see how possible it will be to reduce cost on businesses that has made so many to be making losses, that has made some to even pack up and leave the country. So when you juxtapose the two of them, you will now discover that the MPC meeting is in for a serious deliberation today.
Indeed. I mean, it's not news that whatever outcomes will come out of that meeting would come after very serious deliberations. You made a very valid point with regards to inflation, but you also did say that if there is indeed an increase in the monetary policy rate, it just might not be, completely positive at the end of the day. But we have seen, do I say, a trend within some certain African countries who have had their monetary policy meetings recently. For instance, I should make mention of Zambia and Kenya. And most analysts would say that Nigeria should probably take a leaf out of the book of these countries. But bringing it back home to, our current economic indicators and everything we're looking at, what exactly, will be considered when reviewing rates?
Presently, I'm sure two key things will be considered very, very critically when reviewing the MPC rate. The first one is inflation, and the second one will be the strength of the naira. You discover that the naira has been losing strength over time, and it's just of recent that it has started making some gains. And inflation and the strength of the naira are key to the economic prosperity of the country, and they are key to the economic stability of Nigeria. So when you look at the CBN's decision as regards the rate, it has to be a decision that will further strengthen the naira, that will mop up excess liquidity to make sure that the naira regains more strength against major currencies like the USD and the rest. So looking at the position of the naira now, I'm believing that whatever decision that will be taken will be to ensure that the naira strengthens on the long run and also inflation begin to drop. You did mention, the, volatility that has been witnessed recently around the naira. And there has been a number of reforms from the government, trying to, bridge that gap, or bridge that gap, or cause uniformity across board. Let's talk to issues around the recent, reforms from the CBN, from the statement we saw on Friday, where the CBN came out to, categorize BDCs into tier 1 and tier 2. And the demands from the CBN to these BDCs. Let us hear from you. Are you, will that in any way, breach or uniform the naira, like what we're trying to see come from the CBN? I'm an advocate of reforms in the BDC sector. Before now, if you look at the statistics of BDCs we have in Nigeria, there are over 5,000. We don't have any business having 5,000 or 6,000 BDCs in this country. It's just like the era when we had 89 banks and there were so many systemic failures during that time. So the idea of CBN categorizing the BDCs to tiers is what I've long advocated for, to be able to whittle down the numbers, to have serious contenders, to have people of integrity run these BDCs. There is no reason why we cannot have mega BDCs that can run in all states of the country and be able to compete with other financial sector players.
Sorry to cut you short. You said people of integrity.
Yes.
But we do understand that these BDCs are registered even under the CBN.
Yes, they are registered under the CBN. One of the failures of the past CBN administration is adequate monitoring of the CBN, of the BDCs, to the extent that they go ahead and do whatever it is they like. You have seen that constant monitoring of the BDCs and constant reforms as surrounding the BDCs has started yielding fruit to the extent that the Naira is trending. This was lacking to the extent that even the weekly allocations were removed by the last administration of in CBN. And when you do not have any stake in a business, it will be very difficult for you to regulate that business. That constant weekly allocation makes CBN a key stakeholder, apart from the fact that they have regulatory authority over the BDCs. So I believe that when you have people of integrity, looking at the criteria that has been rolled down for members that will be on the board of these BDCs, you will discover that there should be people that know what it is to run a BDC, not just people that have gotten some funds and want to start the dollar business. There should be people that know the dynamics of the economy of the country and are ready to be able to salvage it to a large extent. Some of the monetary measures that will be taken with these tiers of the BDC will make it a little bit difficult for all these unscrupulous practices we have seen in the past, and it will make monitoring of the BDCs easier, and it will also make sanctions to be easily meted on them. When you have a 2 billion capitalization, you will not want to misbehave, and when you are a fringe player in tier 2, you will not want your license to be withdrawn. So, and this measure would also be able to trim down BDCs, and some of them that do not really have any business being a BDC will either merge or will get out of the scene.
Okay, let's talk to, how the BDCs have received this news. We did hear from the president of the Association of Bureau de Change Operators of Nigeria, and the person of Gbolade, where he came out to say that he wasn't in support of this recent developments from the CBN, and his point was centered around the capital base that BDCs are expected to have in the amount of about 100 million and 500 million. Yeah. So now bringing it home, he's saying that capital base shouldn't be past about 35 million naira for each BDC operator. What would you have to say about the high amount of capital base the CBN, has introduced?
When you are in the financial sector, the capital base must be adequate for the businesses that you are doing. The adequacy of the capital base is what has made some financial institutions to go down over the years. Looking at BDCs that have 35 million capital base and people consummating transactions of billions, even with that 35 million capital base, it makes it easier for them to easily liquidate when there are unscrupulous transactions through them. But when they have a sizable capital base that is domiciled with the CBN, they will know that they must conduct their businesses in a proper manner, in a legitimate manner, so that they will not lose their base, they will not lose their capital base. The advocation for 35 million or thereabout capital base will continue. I do not see it reasonable in the present economic stance, where CBNs are now become major players, playing side by side deposit money banks and other financial institutions. Because over time, you will discover that most of the FX transactions, that high volume FX transactions, are run through the BDCs. And when you are doing such high volume transactions, then your capital base should be adequate for it. Presently, the capital base of most of these BDCs is not adequate for the businesses they are doing. And it could lead to systemic failure over time if nothing is done about it.
Okay, let us speak down to other issues, other metrics aside from the monetary policy rate, like the CRL, that is the cash reserve ratio, yes, and asymmetric corridor. Do you also expect any adjustment for those?
Basically, the way I'm saying it, there might not be adjustment on the CRR and the asymmetric corridor because we still want the banks to continue to do business. The government is looking at a situation whereby consumer credit is rejuvenized and banks are able to give out as much retail credit as possible. So funds are needed by these banks. They do not need to be tied down in the CBN. They need to go out there to be able to stimulate the economy. So I also believe that the key aspect that could be changed most likely will be the rates, the MPC rate, at the end of the day.
Like you rightly stated, there has been quite a number of reforms from the CBN trying to sanitize the markets generally, yes, the FX market. What do you foresee, coming out from that meeting, in the sense that we do expect to hear from the CBN governor at the end of the meeting, like I stated before. I do expect also to see some measures, being meted, yes, towards the FX market. What, in your own point of view, as someone who watches this space closely, would you expect the CBN governor, came up with to, address the issues that we're currently facing in the FX market? Actually,
the major problem in the FX market is arbitrage and the handling of cash. And that angle, CBN is trying to block the loophole. The second aspect is the willing buyer, willing seller policy of the CBN, which to me is not a bad idea. But looking at our present situation, when you put a policy of willing buyer, willing seller, then we must have adequate funds to support it. Because of that trend, it has encouraged more arbitrage in the area where crypto assets are now being traded to be able to gain advantage over the position of the government. You see a situation whereby it will be trading at the official at 1,500 and thereabout, and it goes up to 1,819 in the black market. And so what we are trying to control before is now resurfacing. So a situation whereby this arbitrage is nipping the bud is what can help the country. And that is why I am in total support of ensuring that less cash is being handled when it comes to FX transactions. FX transactions should be monitored. If transactions are monitored, people will not take undue advantage of it because they know that it can be traced. That is why even the idea of PTAs and BTAs being done online, being transferred, is also a good idea for people to use their cards so that these funds can be monitored. The CBN can monitor the banks as regards the transactions that are going on, and they can monitor the BDCs and others that goes with it. So if you look at the cashless policy in the past, if not for one or two problems that arose, you will discover that it caused a reduction in fraudulent activities because these funds, when they are transferred, can be monitored and can be traced. And that is what is being replicated when it comes to FX transactions. We want these transactions to be monitored. We want it to be traced. We are not the owner and the manufacturer of the US dollars. We don't have a business with carrying US dollars side by side our Nigerian naira. And that has to stop. The importance of ensuring that these reforms sink down to the all levels is for it to ensure that we have stability in the system. And that is what CBN is trying to do presently, to ensure that less FX cash is in the hands of people. And those that are hoarding the cash will now find it difficult to be able to be passing it around when it is now mandatory that you can only receive less than 500 USD in cash from transactions across the counter. So these are very, very important decisions that I believe that the CBN will want to push through to be able to reduce all the problems we have in the FX sector presently.
You said something very important, saying that we are not the manufacturers or owners of the USD.
Yes.
However, conversations around the dollar is something that goes on in business spaces, yes, and gatherings. But let's speak to issues around the dollarization of the Nigerian economy, which the CBN has, spoken to over and over again. And that brings us back to minute issues such as, having or owning a domiciliary account.
Yes.
I would like to hear from you. Is this something that should be encouraged? Because people have spoken against, owning and running domiciliary accounts from, Nigeria. But let's hear from you. What are your thoughts on that?
I do not see anything wrong in owning and running domiciliary accounts because Nigeria is a global village, and the USD is still the highest tradable currency in the world for transactions. And because Nigerians are upwardly mobile people, they would need to travel all around the world. And when you travel all around the world, you will need a currency that is acceptable almost everywhere. So I do not see any reason why Nigerians should not own domiciliary accounts to be able to carry out those purposes. Also, for those that have children that needs to go to institutions in other countries, they will also need these foreign currencies to be able to run it. But be that as it may, when we are looking at situations whereby these accounts are now being used as a business, that is where the problem comes in. Because we discovered that about two weeks ago, there was a discovery that banks are hoarding about $7 billion in their deposit, and they use this for transactions based on the willing buyer, willing seller initiative of the CBN. It is wrong, because we discovered that when these are part of the moves that made the dollars to be scarce, and according to the law of economics, when there is scarcity, price tend to go high, and it will not be to the survival of the fittest. So we want a situation whereby emphasis will not be made solely on the usage of these foreign currencies, because it is because of that we have the problems that we have presently. And do not forget also that Nigeria is an import-dependent economy, and that is why every conversation must or will be centered around the US dollar. And it goes so funny to the extent that even somebody that is selling yam in the market will tell you dollar has increased, because for one reason or the other, maybe for logistics reasons or fertilizers or stuff, they will still need to engage the USD. So the government needs to de-dollarize the economy of Nigeria. I'm happy that we have started stopping the idea of awarding contracts in dollars in this country, because at a point, IPP projects, integrated power projects, were being awarded in dollars. It is wrong. That means the USD now takes center stage over our own Nigerian naira. And that over time is what has brought us to this level that we are in, over reliance on the US dollars. So things have to change to the extent that when we reduce the usage of the US dollar in our own economy, then the people that actually need it will now be able to make use of it. Because presently, the people that are buying the US dollars is not for import. It is to hedge against inflation. It's a business transaction. And they continue to buy to the detriment of those that actually need it. And that is why we're in this problem. Indeed, the government must find measures, rather, to de-dollarize the Nigerian economy. Gbolade Idokolo, who is an economic analyst, speaking extensively to issues around the MPC meeting that will be, concluded today, and the Nigerian economy in general. Thank you again for coming on Business Daily this morning. Thank you for having me. And thank you for your insights on the topic. Thank you, my pleasure. And this is where we draw the curtains on today's edition of Business Daily, coming to you on Trust TV. Join the conversation on social media and let us hear your thoughts on the topic of discussion this morning. My name is Chiamaka Enendu. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.